Frame rate is the rate or the frequency in which a camera captures an image or a projector presents an image in front of your eyes. Cine cameras take many photographs per second. And when those images are passed in front of your eyes, they create the illusion of movement. And there are different frame rates. The one that is mostly associated with movies is 24 frames per second or 24p. That means that in the space of 1 second, you have 24 pictures or frames pass in front of your eyes, and your eyes interpret that as movement, as motion. There are higher frame rates than that, and they offer different looks. Let me ask you a question. Is there a difference between the look of a movie and the look of a telenovela? They look different. When you're looking at telenovela, when you're looking at okay, when you're seeing a telenovela, it doesn't look like a movie. Or when you're seeing one of these live shows, one of these live TV shows, these shows that mommies like to look at, like those shows like X Factor or America Got Talent, and shows like that, or La Voz. That doesn't look like a movie. The look is very different. If you look at these TV shows, the amount of detail that they have is more. And they are like busy on the eye. They're very busy. Film is a little bit more relaxing on the eye, and there are reasons for that. It has to do with the frame rate. But we're going to talk more about that later. It also has to do with resolution. It would be the other factor. Your typical movie is shot at 24 frames per second. And right now, I'm putting you under advice that whenever you're shooting a movie, and you will be shooting something very soon, I want you to shoot it at 24p or 24 frames per second. You can adjust that in your camera. So I'm asking you to familiarize yourself with your cell phone camera and find the settings for frame rate and adjust it for 24. I don't want it shot at 30. I don't want it shot at 48. I don't want it shot at 60 because the look is going to be different. Okay? So basically, guys, that's what frame rate is. There's a video here that explains it very well. So I hope that you took the time to watch the PowerPoint that I put in my website and use the link to watch the video like you were supposed to, okay? Okay, today's lesson is titled Photographic Composition. And today we're going to begin with the more practical aspects of cinematography. What you're supposed to be learning in this lesson and in the next couple of lessons are highly applicable, highly practical, because this part of the course is very technical. I'm not denying that it has artistic um, inclinations, but what you learn here today uh, can have a very high artistic impact on your work, even though it's very technical material. Okay, what is composition? I don't know if you have ever been asked by your mom or your dad during a holiday, during a family get together or a celebration, those type of celebrations that we usually have during Thanksgiving, during Christmas family dinners, during New Year's parties when we're saying goodbye to the old year and saying hello to the good new year, right? Um, and usually we take a lot of photographs during those um, events, during those celebrations. And probably at one moment, your mom said, "Take a picture of me with your aunt." And you did your best to take a picture. And when you look at the picture, it didn't look as good as you thought it would look. Has that ever happened to you? Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm going to teach you today. So we're going to be talking about photographic composition, and here we're going to share some techniques that will vastly improve your photography if you apply them. Okay. So what is photographic composition? Well, first we have to know what composition means. And composition is the science of assembling something. It's a very creative activity where we connect things, where we build, we construct an image, and we arrange it in a way like to call attention to what is important to us and create good balance. Balance is very important in composition, any type of composition. That is true of photographic composition. Composition is also a way of guiding the viewer's eye toward the most important elements of your work, and sometimes in a very specific order. You arrange things in a way that will make the viewer look at this first, this later, and this last. Good composition can make a masterpiece or be a very beautiful piece of work out of the most common, mundane, and dull things. I have seen ugly pictures of beautiful women. I have seen beautiful pictures of something like a rusty nail. Can you believe that? Because of the way it was shot, the photographic composition made all the difference in the world. No, but it's not about the camera, it's about the technique. It has nothing to do with the quality of your camera. You can have, I told you earlier that you can have the best tools in the world and still fail. You can put a brush in the hands of any person, and that will not turn them into a Picasso. That will not turn them into a Leonardo da Vinci. However, having a brush to paint is already a good thing because you have the correct tool. You're not supposed to be painting with a spoon. I'm sure there are people out there that could do it, but that's not what you usually use, right? You don't use a Q-tip to make a painting. You use a brush to take pictures. You use a camera, but having a good camera will not guarantee a good photograph. You need techniques, and you need to understand composition, which is what we're talking about here today. So, composition has to do with arranging things in a way that makes an image work beautiful and balanced. And this balance has a lot to do with the way that your eyes work. So, you have to understand how the human eyes work in order to know what is balanced so you can achieve that balance. What is the goal of photographic composition? The goal is to present what is most pleasant to the eye. If you remember in the first lessons when we were talking about the goals of cinematography, one of the terms that we used was visual pleasure because human beings are highly visual and we take a great deal of pleasure out of looking at things. When you go on vacation, you take pictures so you can remember the places that you visited, and then you look at those pictures, and that gives you a great amount of pleasure. When you visit a museum, the very existence of a museum has to do with causing in the viewer visual pleasure. We enjoy seeing things. Remember, I told you that when we look at the use of our senses, we're 90% visual. Composition has to do with presenting what is pleasant to the eye. And it's about presenting your subject matter, the subject that you're shooting, in a pleasant way, even if what you're looking at is not necessarily pleasant. As I already told you, I've seen pictures of very beautiful women, and the picture is not good because it was not shot correctly, it was not shot in a way that is aesthetically pleasing. I've seen pictures of old wood boards, rusty nails, rusty chains, and those ugly things have been shot beautifully. Now, there are some people that do not believe that every work of art has to be beautiful to the viewer, which is what usually is construed as uh, the goal of all art to present beauty, to create beauty and present it, right? Some artists try to impress strong ideas on the audience or the viewer, and they compose the idea, their subjects in a way to present these ideas. For example, there you have a picture of actress Charlize Theron, and she's shot in a way where she looks gross, and it's done intentionally. She's shot in a way that is not aesthetically pleasing, but it presents certain ideas. Oh, by the way, that woman that you're seeing there is the same woman that you're seeing here. Notice that that is the same woman, but she is shot differently. So the effect that we get is different, okay? Yeah, believe it or not, it's the same actress. A very beautiful actress, Charlize Theron. Here, we have a good example of composition in this war picture. Here we have a photograph of a war scenario. This is a picture that was taken in Syria, and during this time there was a war in Syria. That's a soldier. You can see the weapon strapped to his back, and you can see the streets, the dirty cobblestone streets of Syria. And what is he doing? He's feeding a little kitten. So there's a beauty, but there's like an ugliness, because here we see the contrast between the elements of war. A soldier, his face is covered. He looks dangerous. He looks dark. He looks ominous. He has this weapon strapped in his back, but he is feeding this small, very vulnerable looking kitten. So this is a picture of very strong contrast between what is strong and deadly and what is like delicate and beautiful, represented in the kitten. So uh, photography can do this too. This is good composition, even though it's not showing something that is very beautiful. It is showing something that is very interesting, and it has an emotional impact and resonance. So composition, students, is very important. I'm going to be teaching you some techniques now that you can follow. I'm going to share 5 things you can look into in your photography that you can use. Now, you don't use them all. You don't use all 5 of them at the same time. And I think that the analogy that we can make here is the following. You know that in your kitchen, your mommy has a spice rack, right? Mommy uses spices when she's cooking. If she's doing spaghetti, she's using Italian spices like basil, marjoram, um, oregano, right? Because those are typical spices that you use in Italian cuisine. A lot of garlic. If your mommy is making something Chinese, she probably has some ginger, and she probably has some like white pepper, and she has other Ajinomoto, and she has other spices that are used in Asian cuisine. But imagine if mommy was going to make a meal and she used every single spice that she has in the rack. Would that meal taste good? It will probably be horrible. It will probably be horrible, right? If she used every spice, she would end up with something that nobody would eat, most likely. So you have to use some spices in the right combination, in the right proportion. Okay? The same thing applies to what I'm going to be teaching you today. You use 1 or 2 of these, but you don't use all of them because you're going to have a mess. So let's go ahead and show you some of the things that you need to look at when you're shooting a photograph. The first thing you're going to look at is at patterns. Patterns is a repeated form or design. When you have repetition, and this picture is a picture that was taken at Arlington National Cemetery in Virginia. And as you know, this is also known as the National Cemetery. You can see that they're emphasizing and highlighting the fact that there are patterns here, that there's repetition, and that's being highlighted here. And this pattern is unbroken. So that is something that is visually pleasant to human beings. So you can look around and look at patterns. Maybe you can find patterns in a brick wall. Maybe you can find patterns in designs in a ceiling or in the floor. You have to be very careful and look around to see if you see patterns. And then you take your subject the person that you're shooting, if you're shooting a person or the object that you're shooting, and you place it in a way that is framed by these patterns, and that will make for probably a nice photo. So look at patterns. What else should you be looking at? Symmetry. And symmetry has to do with the relationship between two sides of a whole. In this case, look at symmetry. That is a crane in a pond looking for dinner. And as you can see, the light is hitting it in a way where the reflection is basically the same size and is also connected to the real crane. And it looks like there are two cranes there, one on top and one below. It's a very beautiful, very simple and elegant photograph. And a symmetrical shot with strong composition and a good point of interest can lead to a striking image like the one that you're seeing here. So next time you're taking a picture, look for symmetry and try to apply it. Okay. Another thing that you should look at when you're taking pictures is at the texture. And the texture has to do with the feel or appearance and consistency of the surfaces or the substances that we're photographing. This here is not a very nice looking ship. It's a derelict. It's been beached. It's not in the ocean. It's not seaworthy. We'll probably sink to the bottom of the ocean. However, if you look at it, it is shot beautifully. It's a very interesting photo. I like it very much. I like the colors that I'm seeing here. The surface is very interesting and it has colors that contrast with the surrounding colors also. It has like a roughness, a grit to it that contrasts with the smoothness of the sky. So that is highly interesting. So you need to look at textures next time you're taking pictures. Textures where maybe a rough wall, maybe the textures in the different fabrics that we use. Sometimes we dress using fabrics that are interesting. Remember that these are like spices on a spice rack. You don't use all the spices. You can choose one or the other and integrate them to your photography, to your composition. This is one that we're going to be spending a lot of time discussing later. But this is called depth of field. And notice that what we have here is a photograph of several cans of Coke. This is Diet Coke. Are they all in focus? Or how many cans do you see there? How many cans? No, how many cans? How many cans do you see here? No, no. How many cans do you see here? The question remains four. Mr. Hernandez, thank you. There are four. There is one in the foreground, which is the closest one to you. Is it focused or is it blurry? It's actually blurry. It's not focus. Focus is when something is highly detailed and crisp. That's what focus means. Second one is focus. And then you'll see that the third one is blurry, it's unfocused. And there's the last one that is very blurry, very, very, very blurry. Some of you didn't see it at the beginning. Okay, that's why some of you said three instead of four. So notice that that's what depth of field does. It focuses on part of the image while the rest of the image is unfocused. And let me tell you, of all the photos that you have seen, this one is the most natural to the eye because this is how the human eye sees. Did you know that? We have something called stereoscopic vision. That means that our eyes are in the front of our face, and that we use depth of field and we focus on certain objects, like any predator. If you want to see an example, let's do a little experiment right now. I want you to look at the farthest point where you're at, the farthest place you can see. Okay, now I want you to take your index finger and put it 12 inches away from your face and focus on it. I want you to focus on your finger as you're looking in that direction. Can you see your finger? What's happening to the rest? But oh, did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? Everything, one thing is in focus, everything else is blurry. That is how we see. So that's why depth of field is so pleasant to the eye. But we'll talk more about that in the future, okay? And lines is another element that you can use in your photography. Look at those lines. If you see lines, they can be a very powerful element in any image. They have the power to draw the eye to key focal points. So you can use lines in your photography. Okay, there's a video that I want you to see in the presentation, in the PowerPoint, not in the PDF. And the PowerPoint, remember, is in my website. And you're going to see a video on the different types of camera angles and movements that you have to memorize and learn, because that's part of the language that we're going to be using in this class. You have to know what things like full shot are, what's a medium shot, what's a close up, what's depth shot, what is a low angle, what's a high angle, what's eye level, what's overhead, what is a Dutch angle, what's a POV shot, what's panning, what's tilting, what's a dolly shot, what's chucking, what's tracking, what's handheld, what's deep focus, what is shallow focus, what is rack focus, wide angle lens, telephoto lens, normal standard lens, zoom shot, boom shot, and OTS or over the shoulder. You have to learn all that, and the video will show you what it looks like, because you're going to be using all these tricks on your videography. Okay, there's a rule that that's the last thing I'm going to be talking about, because we're not going to have more time to talk about anything else. The rule of thirds. And I want you to look at this picture. You have two images there, and they are images of the same thing. They're taken in a desert in California, and they're the photograph of a dead tree. And dead trees are not pretty. But you will notice a difference between one photograph and the other. What's the image? What's the difference that you see in the images? Okay, thank you. One is in the center, dead center, and the other one is slightly offset. And one of the things that you do when you're taking pictures, which is a mistake that I also used to do, is like put things in the middle and take a picture, because we think that that will make it look better. It does not, because it's not balanced, because that's not the way the human eye works. If you look at the other picture, you see green lines, and you'll see 9 quadrants, and you see that there are 2 horizontal lines and 2 vertical lines. You see where they intersect, where the lines touch each other. The human eye naturally focuses on those 4 points. You see 4 points there where the lines connect. The human eye, for reasons I do not understand because I am not a scientist, our attention focuses to those 4 points. So whatever is aligned in those 4 points appears as balanced and pleasant to the human eye. Don't ask me why. I'm just repeating what scientists say. And I know it's true because I'm looking at it, and for some weird reason I cannot explain, it looks better. It looks more balanced. You see how one line is aligned with the tree? So our eyes tend to like gravitate there. And it feels like pretty for some reason we don't understand. I don't know if you agree or not, but I think that most people would agree with that. I do certainly agree. It looks better to me. It looks less busy. It looks more natural. So next time you take a picture, Mr. Hernandez, next time you take a picture, use this technique. Try to, instead of taking a picture of something, putting it in the center of the camera, move it a little bit to the side. Use that grid. You know what? Your cameras, you have a grid like that. Just enable it, and that will help you get a better composition. Use this technique. And look at that picture. There you have another example of the use of it in a movie. How our eyes focus on the woman and her face, and on the man and the bottom and his face. And when you're recording a movie, you want the eyes of the viewers to go to human faces. Why go to human faces? The simple reason that the human face will always be the most interesting aspect or shot in a movie, because a lot of things happen in the human face. Human faces create a variety of expressions and storytelling possibilities. So that's why good cinematography will try to create, call people's attention to the faces, because that's where the story is being told in a movie. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay, so please look into this. Look at the videos that are in the PowerPoint. Remember that the videos are not optional. You are required to see them, like you have to. Okay. There you have another picture where the rule of thirds is being used from a movie called The King's Speech, and texture is being used here. In case you didn't know, look at the wall. That ugly wall looks wonderful. So it's a very interesting picture, even though most of what we have there is a blank wall. It is aesthetically pleasing.